What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another DC Multiverse Custom. And today we're going to be working on making this Red X. I guess a more tactical version of Red X, but I got commissioned to make this guy. And in the commission, he had a specific idea to use some other fodder to make him. And I asked him if he wanted me just to try to make this guy as cheap as possible. And he agreed to that. And so we got two discount Batmans here to start off. So these guys were like $10 on a Big Bad Toy Store each. Maybe one was on Big Bad Toy Store, one was on Amazon, but these guys were pretty cheap, so I decided to use these base bodies to try to make my custom. So I heated them up and tore them down, and also I went through all of my parts I have. Whenever I see a figure for sale, I usually pick them up and then tear them all down and keep them all in separate boxes so I can see what parts I have for customs like this, or if I ever need to like swap something out or anything like that. Comes in use for customs like this where I don't really know what I'm doing, but I just want to throw something together. So here's the hazmat Batman's kind of cool how he's put together, but also kind of difficult to use for customs because that logo is just clear. And so over on top of that is like a rubber overlay, and so I had to pull all that off, but it was kind of cool taking him apart. But I decided I was going to use the Hazmat Batman torso and legs, the Dark Detective belt, and these armor pieces, the front and the back, and then the Dark Detective knees. I was trying to just use as much as I could from both figures, so I used the Dark Detective's gauntlets as well, and then the arms actually stole off of this Blight. I bought this guy on Big Bad Toy Store, I believe, as well, for like $10 or $15, and I wasn't going to use him here. I was going to save him for something in the future, but I decided his arms probably matched the texture of the legs really well, or they seem to match the texture of the legs really well, so I went ahead and used these arms. Also, this is kind of an unnecessary step, but I had some forearms from the game version of Nightwing, and so I decided to go ahead and switch those over so I could get those gauntlets on a little bit easier, because the forearms are much thinner than Blight's were, so I would have to do less dremeling to get those on. But this turned into a big hassle because I had to remake the kind of connection from the shoulder to the forearm, or to the bicep. I had to redo that articulation piece. This was a lot bigger of a hassle than it was worth, but helped me save a little bit of dremeling, but also caused me a lot of pain in trying to figure out how to set this arm all up. But you can see here's kind of the test fit of how all the pieces fit together, and it was going pretty well here. I kind of liked how these shoulder pads looked on him, but in the end I ended up not using them just because it added a little bit too much bulk, I believe. But to get everything on a nice base coat, I used this RIT dye to get everything just black, so I can go ahead and start painting and not have to worry about chipping on the knees or the elbows or anything like that. But this turned out to be a big problem because the parts that I dyed black did not want to hold paint very well. Every time I tried to clear coat after painting, the black dye would just seep through the clear coat and it would ruin my color. So in the future, moving on with dyeing figures, I'm gonna make sure that I either mask off the parts I'm gonna paint later, or I just don't dye those parts and just paint them the regular way and maybe sand down the joints to avoid chipping or anything like that. But I painted all the parts black after this just to get a nice coat of something for the later paints to stick to. And then I painted all of the metal armor parts with this gunmetal color from Citadel. So now I was just going around trying to punch in color wherever I could. DC Multiverse skimps out on the paint a lot, and so all this sculpted detail is just kind of flat and boring. So whenever I'm doing like a full custom like this, I like to try to go ahead and punch in detail wherever I can. But you can see the colors I used were really bright on this guy. They looked a little goofy at this point, but I was planning on doing a full black wash on him, so I was just trying to paint the colors pretty bright at this point because I know that black wash is really going to bring these colors down. So I was just kind of messing around with some paints and wanted to see what it looked like. But for the chest, I actually painted it red first, and I put on this sticker you can see. It's I cut it out with my Cricut so I could get a nice clean X on the logo. So I just painted it red, stuck the sticker on, and then went ahead and painted it gunmetal like the rest of the armor. You can see the legs though, I tried to punch in some of those details like I was saying. They had this kind of rib texture here on the inside of the pants, so I just painted those gray, and then I hit this kind of stripe he had going up his legs with some red paint. I'll tone this down later, but right now I was really wanting to just try to mess around and see what everything looked like with these different paints on it. I painted the straps and this little kind of pouch on the side a darker gray I was gonna try to avoid it with the wash, just so I didn't really want it looking that dirty, but I wanted to match the belt as well, and I knew I wasn't gonna give the belt a wash, so I painted the whole belt with that darker gray as well. And then went around with some silver and punched all these rivets and stuff like that in. I need to paint these knives on the back still, but I just hadn't gotten around to that yet. But all the other parts, I kept this silver color, and I really liked how it turned out. Also added some details to these kind of piping, I guess, on his arms. This kind of texture here. And at this point, I hadn't sculpted anything on the arms because I was still planning on using those shoulder pads. But since I didn't use those later on, I had to come back and fill in those holes with some sculpt. But then I just started applying the wash everywhere. I wanted this to really darken it up, so I didn't do any, like, I usually water down my washes so I can do more laters and have a little bit more control. But since I really wanted this dark, I just used the wash straight out of the bottle and painted it over everything and let it set. I didn't even dab it off or anything. I just let it set and dry. That way I could really bring these colors down. So here's the chest after I went back and painted the gunmetal part. I also glued this on with some like JB Weld, just because I really didn't want this peeling off in the future. So I super glued and JB Weld the chest and back armor on so it never comes off. But I got that sticker peeled off and it turned out great. I was really happy with that because I really did not want to come back and repaint this logo. So I was really happy with how well that turned out, and this is really easy to do. If you have a Cricut or something, or if you know somebody that has one, this helps add those details without having to really have a steady hand or be really careful with those. I needed to come back and fill in these gaps with a little bit of epoxy sculpt, and also I needed to extend those straps a little bit on the shoulders so that the straps were actually holding up the armor. So now we're seeing the fallout of using the dye on these armor pieces. Is after I clear coated everything, all of these armor pieces turned like this weird goldish type color, which I kind of liked. Like, I didn't mind the color, but it just didn't match. For some reason, the boots and the knee pads didn't turn this color. So it was just the parts that were sculpted on the body and these pouches and everything. You can see it just completely messed up all of my colors everywhere. So instead of using my usual Mr. Hobby Super Clear, I had to go through with some of these varnishes from Vallejo. Since they're water-based, it didn't do the same thing. So I ended up buying more of those later, and I'll show you what I got. But here I sculpted on some of these details. Also, where that hose connected to the torso, or the waist, on the original Hazmat Batman, I sculpted on there too, just to cover that hole up. I also came back and sculpted in, filling in these holes where the shoulder pads used to plug in, just because I knew I wasn't going to use those anymore. And you can see inside the bicep here, the joints I was trying to put together. Since this turned out to be such a mess trying to connect these arms together, I end up just going through so many different things trying to get these connected as well as possible. So I used a ball joint here, and it worked fine. I think I'm still working on kind of the perfect setup for this, just because I should have thought this out a little bit better when I was putting them together, but these shoulders did not want to connect to this arm very well. Here's all the varnishes I bought to try to fix whatever this dye was doing to the paint. Like I said though, these are water-based, so they didn't bring out that dye as bad as the Mr. Super Clear was. And you can see I used a semi-gloss on this and it's still very shiny. Like it looks like it's just the regular gloss, even though it's supposed to be not as shiny. These Vallejo varnishes, I think they pretty much are all kind of glossy, so there's not really a matte version. Or the gloss one definitely is more glossy, but everything else looks pretty much semi-gloss. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but it was kind of annoying that I bought all these bottles and really all you need is the matte and the gloss. Those are the only two that look different. But here's the belt I started painting up. I tried to do that buckle and every time I painted it, the paint would just not stick. It would just rub off really easily and keep coming off. So I ended up having to take some acetone and or nail polish remover and strip the old paint away, the stock paint from the factory. And then after I did that, it worked fine. But here's the head sculpt. I don't know where the video went from where I started with this guy, but this is a head sculpt I got off Colts 3D. It was on a statue for like $5, so I just bought the statue and used a mesh mixer to cut the head off and try to make it fit on the body, and it turned out really well. And then of course I base coated the whole thing in white, then painted all the black parts black, and then painted the red X red, of course. But to paint the eyes, I wanted to try something a little bit different here. Just put some black washes over the eyes and then came back and painted the actual pupils white. So that worked out really well and it gave a really cool effect. I did probably like 3 or 4 washes to the eyes first and then let that dry and painted the white in. And it turned out really good, I think, and it was really easy to do. Here's the legs all assembled too. I got everything still kind of changed colors even with that Vallejo. Even with the Vallejo varnish, everything changed colors a little bit, but in person, it's not even really that noticeable. It just kind of looks pretty noticeable on camera. But also, like I said before, I kind of like the color it was poking through. And so everything matched up pretty well and I wasn't too messed up about the color. But for the belt buckle, I just painted that silver and I came in and punched in this red little circle. And then I ended up doing a black wash on top of that to try to give it kind of like a shining effect. And I hit it with some gloss later and that worked out really well. But here he is all done up. I didn't show the hands or these X's. I just 3D printed these and painted them real quick because I was wanting to get some pictures of this guy. This guy turned out really good and I think it's really fun just to have a figure that I made from just fodder parts that I had laying around or like figures that I got for really cheap, just being able to make something cool like this because all of their parts fit together pretty well and it's just fun to buy a bunch of clearance figures and be able to put something like this together is really the enjoyment I get from customizing is seeing a final result like this. But I'm editing another video soon of probably my last 2 Batman DC Multiverse customs. But I am currently selling all of my DC Multiverse figures. Nothing against them, and I know we still have 2 years until Mattel gets the license back, but I wanted to start jumping on Mafex, and right now seems like a good time to catch up on that. So I got all of my DC Multiverse on sale on my eBay right now. The auction ends, I believe, tomorrow, so that'll be Sunday, March 23rd. So make sure you go check that out if you're interested in buying any of my customs or any DC Multiverse I have. I have like 38 over there, so trying to get some good money from that so I can start my Mafex build up. But I will have more DC stuff. I do still have these 2 Batman Multiverse I need to put together. Once I start getting my Mafex stuff in, I might start hitting some customs there. I'm already thinking of a recipe for a Red Hood. So make sure you're subbed to me here and on my Instagram if you want to see some more DC stuff. Or if you just like custom action figures, make sure you're following me here and there. And I guess I'll see you guys next time. Bye.